I think more promptly put and more rational to the developments of this day and age and what has kind of transpired through humanity as a conduit for the multiplicity of actions that have taken place to lead that that have led to such a bizarre and circumstantially wounded world. This deep gash in our psyche, in our ability to move through life, having a sense of reason, principles, a kind of understanding, and in a lot of ways, not the kind of stereotypical toxic empathy, but a real sympathy, not just for the people, but for the world, that humankind has been an arbiter in, a custodian to, played a multiplicity of roles in this ever-changing, ever kind of hysteric story of our species, this collective waking dream that jumps back and forth as this kind of theodramatic play of this embodiment, this avatar of all these differentiating ideals, this multiplicity of ideals stuck and tied and tethered to this life of this kind of reflective thing, this one species that feels so alone in a vast open sea of cosmic influences, and even alone on its own vast planet that it thinks is too small for its endeavors, for its desires. This reflection of the fear of inadequacy, not being enough, this self-inflicted solitary confinement to living in a box, much like a reflection of living on the world, feeling isolated from everything and being simultaneously surrounded by all other phenomenon going on. A vast universe that's so bewilderingly mysterious and at times frightening to us. It's hard to look at things in this world beyond a perspective of the black and the white, the good and the bad, because we're so conditioned to see the world in any other way other than what we have been taught, this continuous struggle of opposing, rivaling, combating forces, pulling the world apart slowly, and this tremendous quest for meaning and purpose and hope and faith in higher things that spurns us along. But how often our hubris shows that for every action that we take, endeavoring and striving in the pursuit of merit, how many more problems it brings into the world. And ironic for humankind being the species that it is, this seeming custodian and caretaker to the world, takes on instead the mantle of an architect trying to ground its own paradigm, its own ideal of a heaven onto a world that shows us time and time again it's fleeting, it's only temporary. How afraid we are of that and the willingness to admit this because we think it's the end of a story coming to the conclusion and the realization that the world around us is deteriorating. But the thing is, the world has always been deteriorating and decaying, and at the same time, it always seems to replace and replenish the circumstance that transpires upon it with a new formality of life, a new genus of existence. It changes. It doesn't truly fall apart into nothingness. It doesn't deteriorate and decay away into this endless void of emptiness. It's that very void of the entire universe around us that produce the first stars, that unexplainable gravity, the compressed materium from that first light of creation that set all this into motion. That all of this, seemingly, whether you believe it miraculous or not, reflected and produced a species that essentially is a reflection of that entire process, a macrocosm within a microcosm, existing and abiding a world within a world. I think we neglect and play such small roles that keep us stuck and confined to these isolating ideals and principles in the world because the box is easy to swallow. But oftentimes we spend a lifetime of suffering, pursuing keeping that circumstance, and suffering happens regardless in this world. It's the byproduct of being a living, breathing, biological organism. That's the hardest thing to face in this life, is that suffering comes in one formality or another, regardless. The reality of this world beyond the black and white lens, the ideals and the morals, is that it is an alchemical caldera that produces life, and at the same time, that cradle that gives birth to life is the very same cradle that returns life. The world, no matter how far you journey, no matter what you pursue, no matter what you strive and endeavor for and towards, is a tomb. It's a cemetery. And we as human beings exist for a finite given time in this material form, in this material world, this plane, this sphere of influences, this one singular planet we call Earth, that we call home for a short period of time. We call that home. But it's a deteriorating, decaying process that is always changing and always rearranging, and always just at the same time a steady, slow waking dream that inevitably comes to a conclusion. the truth beyond the black and white perspectives, the morals, the ideals. Earth and the human race and the human species have existed for a vast span of time on this planet as the biological organisms they are. We have adapted and evolved to the degrees to facilitate bringing into being the world that we have created and conceptualized, a reflection of what we experience as the living organisms that we are in this field of novelty, this field of ideas and concepts that we have set into motion. But we, as these beings that we are, we too ourselves, like everything on this planet, are finite. We are a fleeting moment, but that's what makes the moment precious. And that's what a lot of people don't understand and will not grasp, because it takes peering beyond the veil of death and dying and the fear and the phobia of such a thing to recognize and realize the eon-long spanning process that took place and played out through all of human endeavor and all that transpired in the universe to just bring this one singular moment of your existence, my existence, everyone and everything's existence into this time and place, to have this experience, to have this singular fleeting moment, this long spanning dream. Regardless of what it is, regardless of what takes place in that dream, regardless of what circumstances we go through and what befalls us, it's been a long spanning process just to have this single moment that we call life transpire. This one transitory moment of paradoxical freedom and at the same time paradoxical limitation taking place simultaneously. This one living, waking mirage of life that we live in. We call it finite, we call it ephemeral, we call it fleeting, we call it temporary. And these are words to describe the phenomenon of life. We can't touch upon the mystery of what transpires after death. We only have brief glimpses and allegories and stories, beliefs, reflections through the nature of our own being, our minds, being that macrocosm, that small universe, that vast universe, that multiplicity of universes at times, taking place in this confining space of the cranium, transmuted through ideals, thoughts, imagination, memory, these patterns that play out that make and give substance to the story of our lives. So often we take for granted. So often we are convinced and propagated to believe, have to play out a certain way, have to exist within certain parameters, have to abide within certain rules of finite limitation. That too in itself is all part of the same game, same story that's been taking place for eons. It's a reflection of the very nature that brought us into being, just playing out on this one small stage, this one field of novelty we call the world. This finite, fleeting moment. But what a beautiful moment it is. And it's only ever perspectives that really shape and mold our ideas of this moment. Oftentimes we see it through the lens of lack, want, need, coveting, desires, boundless, seemingly without end. Even that, it's just a play. It's layer upon layer of vast quantities of dreams happening in one field of novelty we all share. And the experience can be as circumstantial as we make it in the game that we all share, as minuscule as we make it to be in the game we all share. Sometimes it's determined by factors that are out of our control. Sometimes it's not determined by those circumstances and factors whatsoever. It's only ever determined by the things that we choose to believe about ourselves and about the world we live in. In the end of the day, what you're going to find is all limitations, just like you, just like everything on this planet, are really transitory, temporary. They're ideas, or templates of the game that we have played out on this grand stage, this grand act. Even they will pass. Just as we have to come to the acceptance that we too will pass. For a long spanning period of time through this game of human history, that's all that has ever been taking place. Humankind has been passing itself down a mantle, generation upon generation of stories, lesson upon lesson, game upon game, play upon play, dance upon dance. Never really was the point to chase anything out of the world. The purpose of existing was simply to exist and find a modicum of your own reason, your own resolve, something that links you, connects you to that nature, that very standing in the moment. It gets you to see the very vast, big picture. It took an infinitude of events and circumstances transpiring, completely and seemingly separate from your everyday, ordinary, mundane experience you call your life, just to have you blip into being for this given period of time. Do you have gratitude for that? Do you have appreciation for that? Do you feel some remorse, resolve? Maybe these aren't the questions you answer, or maybe these aren't the questions that you're really sinking. Maybe the question is, are you not inspired and brought to a sense of wonder and curiosity? Are you not awestruck at the very fact that you exist in the first place? Gratitude and things of this nature, the merit and the passion for our actions and our deeds, these are all nice, but they're just part of the game. They're part of the story. That's more or less. Do you have that boundless wonder for existence itself? Do you feel connected to everything, or do you feel isolated and separate from everything? The truth beyond the black and white, the truth beyond the morals and the ideals. The species has gone on for as long as it has, and it itself in turn was made from material this world weaved together to create who and what we are. To observe this kind of cosmic reflective principle. We are a mirror of what the universe itself was capable of creating. In this singular moment, we're given a finite period of time to explore, and ponder, and be awestruck by that. To have our little dance amidst the cosmos that birthed us. And to enjoy. To walk through this life trying to show others that. Trying to raise other people to that. Trying to show people that it's not a game of looking down at the world, upon the world around you, but to look up to the world and everything that made this world transpire and take place, surrounding and abounding you. You are that. You're in connection with that. And you've never left that. Never will. And the truth beyond the black and white story is this world is in a state of decay. It's gone on for a long period of time, this human game, and these resources that have created us, inevitably they return to the same state. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It's a very beautiful story taking place, to be birthed from stars, to end up on this little sphere of dreams, sharing and coalescing no matter what they are, just for that brief moment, and then to return to that very process that gave birth to all this after eon long spanning creation. A vast, unquantifiable mystery continuously transpiring and taking place. The truth beyond the black and white, the truth beyond the ideals. It might be time to admit that humanity's running out of not the resources that this world produces, but the very resources that make it as a species sustainable. If you want to equate it to biology, the genome of humanity has transpired and taken place for as long a time as it has. And it's created a multiplicity of different beings of different backgrounds, all of which the divisions and ideals of division are a formality that really by its nature is arbitrary, but we've taken a mantle of playing a game with this species about categorizing and confining our circumstance to this weight and measure of these arbitrary divisions. And maybe that was just a simple lesson of what this species was playing out. Maybe that was this species game. But the division reached a point where the byproduct and the principle of what is necessary to sustain the life of how this species as a being, how this embodiment, this avatar we call human, could continue in a way that was harmonious with the nature surrounding it. Now it requires vast quantities of resources and, in a sense, demands more from the world than what it is capable of substantially providing as a benefit to keep this world perpetually in a state of symbiosis. In a lot of ways, it is not from a black and white lens or perspective that humanity finds itself entangled in these ideas of destitution and this concept of corruption. Maybe it simply is that the game has played on and on for as long a span of time as it has, and finally reached a point where it simply has come to that final conclusion, that evolutionary dead end that has led to a point where the material body, the material form, and the formalities that come along with it, like a skin, are steadily being shed. And at a time and age and place like this, where a lot of people embridle in talks of the spirit, whether they be through beliefs, traditions, religion, other concepts that seem to transcend the boundaries of time, the boundaries of one particular belief or another. Maybe it is the nature and the case in point that humanity has reached a conclusion to its game in this physical embodiment, this cast of characters and actors that have played the roles that they have in the lives that they've lived on this stage, in this stage. It might just simply be the case in point that we've reached the end of that biological clockwork that has always been ticking. And maybe that's not as negative a circumstance as what it might sound like to some, that the time has simply run its course, not run out. It's just we've grown weary of existing and abiding within the field of novelty to such a degree. The circumstance of this world no longer piques our interest and our curiosity. But that's the thing, this world, for what it is, it always has been temporary. And that's a curious thing to ponder in itself, one that doesn't come with a conclusion, ironically, to be reached, no matter how much we try to think or rationalize or explain through our ideals and communicate through our language. To me, that in itself, I found kind of funny. That there was no conclusion to be reached as to what transpires after this life. And no matter what we do, we all end up in that same circumstance of the same cradle that created us, inevitably taking us back. I think it's more comforting than alarming that there's no conclusion. It was deep down in me, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Otherwise, why would humanity go through this vast epoch and story of its existence, talking about and propagating these beliefs and ideals and things like life after death? That ironically, no matter what we do in this life, it concludes, but there's no conclusion to be reached. To me, that indicates that, much like the universe that created us, it simply is a story that just keeps going on in a lot of ways. And maybe the truth is humanity has just reached a point in its story where it's outgrowing the need for this circumstance. Or maybe it's just simply reached a point in the story where it's time to close the chapter on this particular book. And if it's a case in point that we're reflections of this vast, mysterious cosmos, this circumstance of man being a microcosm within a macrocosm, a macrocosm within a microcosm, a universe within a universe, a multitude of worlds within a multitude of worlds, would circumstantially point to the, at the very least, concept that we can communicate that this is just one story, and this is one book potentially coming to its final chapter that's simply ready to be closed. And with the fact that there isn't a conclusion to this particular story that can be really explained, only witnessed, only experienced as it transpires, I don't find that as terrifying as I thought I would at an earlier age when I began having the existential thoughts around it. I find it kind of relieving, because to me, I ponder that it took this eon-long spanning epoch, not just of human history, to reach this point in my life and to see the lives of others playing out and transpiring around me. To know that there were lives before me, and that other things will take place circumstantially long after I'm gone, long after we're all gone. The world will still be here, potentially. The universe will still be here. And that same universe that produced us will continue to do its thing. And even after that, it's not the case in point that the circumstance that took place that led all of this to happening in the first place could transpire again in a different way. What really is there to be worried or afraid of then? If this was just a temporary thing, a temporary affair, and the fear itself is a byproduct of the human body, and that fear just being a survival mechanism that keeps us going on. I don't really find a whole lot to be afraid of than understanding and seeing the deeper relation of that mechanism and something relatively there just to keep us either safe or striving to endeavor against all odds and all elements in this story that is mankind's, humankind's. In a deeper relation to our history and all the fables and folk tales, beliefs and ideals that we have put up through the different generations of human endeavors, the different civilizations, the different time periods. The uniting factor that I found that was very beautiful about humanity was just the story of the hero's journey in general. And the ironic thing about the hero was it was never really defined or categorized by any of the ideals that we take it to be on the surface, not warriors rescuing damsels in distress, or slaying dragons, or raising and toppling kingdoms and tyrants. No. The hero was just someone who walked through life endeavoring and enduring. And that is all humanity has ever done, is endeavor and endure. when you put the black and white to the side, the ideals to the side, and just observe it for what it is, it's a very beautiful, very bewildering, very tragic, and yet very comical story. And even beyond that, there were more stories than just what was going on and transpiring in this world that were beyond the human lens and perspective. Some we narrated, some we observed, some we witnessed in motion. But even these things we couldn't fathom and experience from the human perspective, no matter how good a storyteller we were. Life is boundless levels of mystery and untethered levels of curiosity. It's a beautiful thing that existence itself always seems to produce more things of this nature. Maybe it's not a mystery or a puzzle to be solved. Maybe it's just an experience to be had. Like when one witnesses a dream. There was a saying, and I believe a Zen master said to a student. I think the story went that he fell into a coma, but I can't be for certain. He woke from it, and he said to the student, when asked what he experienced, I had a dream of another lifetime where I was a butterfly. And when I woke from that dream, I couldn't tell if I was me dreaming the butterfly or if it had always been the butterfly dreaming me. I think the nature of existence is simply that. It simply is, in a lot of essence and a lot of aspect, a dream. And in a lot of ways, we as the beings we are reflect that. What are we but a collection of dreamers? No matter what we do, no matter what we put our life and our circumstances to, we're a collection of dreamers. And life was a dream we shared together. And if one dream can take place in this circumstance, then who is to say that another dream and another formality of existence couldn't take place in another place and period of eternity? Though this world might be fleeting and temporary, all that's ever been happening really around us when we look out into that unknown, that same unknown that holds and cradles us and oftentimes terrifies us, fascinates us, inspires us. It's only ever just held itself, that eternity. And maybe we're just reflections of that eternity and dreaming that we're temporary. And that's a beautiful thing.